The early life of Jamie Edgeworth is written and narrated by Marion Jasper. Jamie was born to Lord James and Lady Miranda Edgeworth in 1817. He was named after his father, but his mother called him Jamie, and it stuck. He had vague memories of his mother. She held him and seemed to love him, but when he was around 2 or 3 years of age, she left the family home, and his father told him that she had gone away with a gentleman friend. The little boy sat for weeks and months, watching through various windows, hoping that she would return for him. He was not happy without her, although a nurse was employed to look after him, and she was kindly enough, but not like his mother had been. As he grew, he got used to being without her, and also got used to the stream of ladies that his father would bring home. Some of them were kindly to him, others ignored him, as did his father. They were always short of money, and Jamie would learn later that his father's gambling habit had a great deal to do with that. He remembered the Edgeworth jewellery regularly being taken to the pawn shop, and if his father had a win at the tables, it was redeemed and placed carefully back in the family safe. On occasion, Lady Fawkes would send for Jamie to stay with her family, and Jamie and her eldest son Anthony became firm friends. Her younger son Hector was pleasant enough, but he had his own circle of friends. The Fawkes household was just an hour or so away from the Edgeworth estate, and it seemed that Jamie spent most of his time with Anthony, and Lady Rose Fawkes could see that his father was not a good influence on his son, so she made it her mission to treat him as one of her own. She was not an overly kindly lady, but she felt that it was her duty to keep Jamie safe. There were times when the Dowager Lady Redfern visited the Fawkes household with her son and daughter, and a friendship developed between Jamie, Anthony, and Binkie Redfern. They ignored Bella Redfern most of the time, but there were occasions when they played tricks on her, much to her annoyance. Binkie's real names were Bartholomew Ian Nicholas Kennedy, hence why he was known as Binkie. Luckily, Jamie's grandmother had put aside money specifically for his education. She had seen that Jamie's father was following in his father's footsteps at the gambling houses, and also following the streak of bad luck that they were always blaming on everyone but themselves. The Edgeworth estate was beginning to suffer through lack of funds. The concentration was placed on a couple of farming areas, and they managed to make enough to keep the estate from falling into rack and ruin. The lands in Ireland were left to their own devices, and the house in Belfast needed renovation. But Jamie's father had no money to modernise it, and nobody had visited it for some years. Jamie had a tutor during weekdays, and at weekends he either visited Anthony, or at longer breaks he spent time at the Redferns. He never knew whether his father was at home or not. There were times when he bumped into one of his father's lady friends. He just got used to seeing different ladies wandering around the house, and was always relieved when a carriage arrived to either take him to Anthony's or to Binkie's. Quite often the three boys made their own make-believe world, with Anthony and Jamie always overpowering Binkie for some pretend misdemeanour. They all went to university together, and while Anthony and Jamie were inseparable, Binkie did start to have his own set of friends, although none were ever invited to his home. When they had completed university, Jamie began to see just how run down the Edgeworth estates were, and he started to take an interest and put into operation some inexpensive improvements. He also began lecturing his father on his lack of responsibility, which created many arguments between them. Jamie could see the lure of the gambling tables. He also frequented them on occasion, but he never bet more than he was prepared to lose. Anthony and Jamie frequently travelled to Belfast. Jamie put into operation decorating 1 or 2 of the rooms in the Belfast Edgeworth house, although he always stayed with Anthony on the Fawkes estate, and whilst there he met Evelyn Carstairs. She had known the Fawkes family and Lady Redfern's family. When Jamie informed his father that he was often in the company of Evelyn. His father asked if she was from a wealthy family. "They are not poor, but they are not titled," commented Jamie. "I presume that there would be a dowry of some kind," said his father. "I haven't got that far with the association. She's from an upstanding family, so I am informed. Lady Redfern and Lady Fawkes seem to think that she is quite an asset," said Jamie. "What does your friend Anthony think?" "Binkie is a little preoccupied to have an opinion," said Jamie's father. It was a strange comment from his father, but it was soon forgotten. "Anthony seems to have found the love of his life," said Jamie. "She seems very nice, but her father likes the bottle a little too much for my liking." "Are you becoming a little stuck up, Jamie?" asked his father. "No matter. It's better that you are that way than act like a low-born farmer's son." "I find it difficult to understand why you are such a snob, especially as I have seen the men and women that you associate with," said Jamie with some aloofness. "We are both snobs, Jamie. It's the way that we are, and it is nothing to be ashamed of," said Jamie's father. Every time Jamie was either at Anthony's home or Binkie's, Evelyn had also been invited. She and Diana, Anthony's fiancée, seemed to be very close friends. Initially, Jamie wondered whether Lady Redfern was attempting an association between Binkie and Evelyn, but Binkie showed no interest in the lady. A marriage had been arranged between Bella Redfern and the Duke of Berkshire, who was many years her senior. Bella took the situation with fortitude. It was expected that a union between titled families should take place. Jamie and his father were invited to the wedding, although his father declined on the grounds of ill health. He had been suffering bouts of pain over the past years, which was not helped by his excessive drinking. Once again Jamie was paired with Evelyn, and of course Anthony was with his family and Diana. "It will be your wedding next, won't it?" said Evelyn to Diana, and Jamie noticed a tension in Lady Fawkes whenever the wedding was mentioned. But Anthony and Diana were much too in love to notice the obvious disapproval. Diana's father was also in the group, and he smiled inanely at everyone in sight, whilst helping himself to whatever alcoholic drink was available before the waiters had a chance to refill his glass for him. Jamie did wonder whether Lady Fawkes would have preferred to have Evelyn as a daughter-in-law, but he knew that there was nobody like Diana for Anthony. Hector was showing a dislike of Evelyn, but Jamie put that down to his youth, and the fact that he was going through a stage of disapproving of most things in life. A few months later it was Anthony and Diana's wedding, and Jamie was his best man, with Evelyn acting as bridesmaid. It seemed that once again Jamie and Evelyn were being thrown together. "You should make an honest woman of that Evelyn," said Jamie's father on one of the rare occasions that they were together. "I have not dishonoured her, father," snapped Jamie, "but maybe you are right. It is about time that I married and ensured the family heritage, such as it is. We are not in a position to command a union between another titled family and ours, so perhaps Evelyn would be a suitable match under the circumstances. From what I understand, she would be extremely happy with a title when I am no longer around," said Jamie's father. "It will be a good arrangement for you both. Her family has money, and you will eventually have a title, and hopefully she will provide you with an heir. Yes, all very suitable." "I suppose I had better travel to Belfast to meet her family," said Jamie, with very little enthusiasm. "In our position we have to do things that are not as we would wish, but you can always take a mistress to lighten your situation," said Jamie's father. "That's how most of our class cope with our marriages." "Anthony and Diana are not like that," said Jamie. "That is a true love match." "That is very unusual in titled families. No doubt that will change over time, and once Anthony has an heir," said Jamie's father. Jamie looked at his father and had to admit that he was probably right. So he made the decision to go to Belfast and offer for Evelyn, knowing that it would not stop his way of life. His proposal to Evelyn was readily accepted, and even his father made the journey to Belfast to join the celebrations. Jamie gave him credit for not immediately asking what dowry would be expected of the Carstairs family. Anthony, Diana, Hector and Rose Fawkes attended the celebrations, as did Wendell and Amelia Fuller. Also there was James Marchant and his son Frederick. Jamie immediately warmed to Wendell and Amelia. James Marchant was a little more aloof, but as he had recently lost his wife, that was to be expected. "When will you be marrying, Jamie?" asked a friendly Amelia Fuller. "Oh, we have plenty of time to organise that. There is no rush. We are enjoying making all the suitable arrangements," said Jamie, and Evelyn appeared to agree with that. It was obvious that she was in no hurry, and that she was enjoying the freedom that being engaged to a future lord provided. "We are having a small soirée next week," said Amelia. "I will send invitations if you would like, Jamie." "I would like that, Amelia, if I may call you that," said Jamie. He really did like the Fullers, and he decided that spending more time in Belfast would be enjoyable. "Perhaps Anthony and Diana would also like to attend," said Amelia, and off she went to see Anthony and Diana, who said that they would be in Belfast for another fortnight, so they would be delighted to join them. "Will your father be with you for very long?" asked Wendell. "No, he's returning to Surrey the day after tomorrow, but I will see if he would like to stay longer," said Jamie. But the answer was that his father had urgent business that he had to attend to. Of course, Jamie knew that the urgent business was attempting to gain finance from the gambling tables. Wendell then introduced James Marchant and his son Frederick to Jamie, and Frederick and Jamie seemed to enjoy one another's company. Jamie's circle of friends in Belfast was beginning to grow, and he knew that if he wanted to spend more time there, he would have to make his house a little more habitable. He could not keep staying with Anthony, as he knew that he would not want to spend so much time there, as he had his estates in England to watch over. Money was scarce, but Jamie found enough to make his house less derelict, and he managed to gain a housekeeper who was happy to supervise what was needed. She was a Mrs. Trent, and Evelyn felt that she would be very adequate, although Jamie thought that more staff would be necessary. A year passed, and Jamie and Evelyn were still just engaged. "It's about time that you got married," said Jamie's father. "I suppose so, but Evelyn is quite happy as we are," said Jamie. I think the time has come," said his father. "We do need an heir." "I'm going to Belfast this weekend. I'll discuss it with Evelyn," said Jamie. "Are you staying at our property in Belfast?" he asked. "Yes, it's much more habitable now," said Jamie. "How have you managed that? Have you some money that I don't know about?" said Jamie's father. "I had 1 or 2 wins at the tables whilst I was in Belfast, so I immediately put it into the property," said Jamie. "I didn't know that you gambled," said his father. "I gamble no more than I can afford, unlike you," said Jamie. "I sometimes go with Frederick Marchant and 1 or 2 others, but not on a regular basis. Frederick is not quite so lucky at the tables, and I do hope that he is not getting in deeper than he can afford." "Well, that's down to him," said his father. Said Jamie thoughtfully. Jamie had an uncomfortable trip to Belfast. The sea was choppy as it would be in March. He was pleased to set foot on dry land. Wendell was talking to someone on the docks, and when he caught sight of Jamie, he made his way towards him. "It's good to see you again, Jamie," said Wendell. "We will see you this evening at James Marchant's birthday party. I know that you and Evelyn have been invited." "I didn't know that there was such an event tonight. No doubt Evelyn would have told me when I saw her," smiled Jamie, who really felt that the last thing that he needed was to attend a birthday party for someone that he hardly knew. But of course he was Frederick's father, so he would not decline the invitation. "Yes, Liza has been insistent that Frederick invite some of his friends to the party," said Wendell. "Liza?" said Jamie. "Ah, yes, Frederick did say that his father had married again. He did not say that Frederick had voiced a detrimental opinion on his father's remarriage to a child, and he hoped that it would not be an awkward evening." "As you've only just arrived, I'm sure you'll be excused for being late. Liza wouldn't take offence anyway," said Wendell, which led Jamie to believe that Liza was liked by the Fuller family. Evelyn was waiting for him when he arrived at his house, and she confirmed that they had been invited to James Marchant's birthday party. "Do we have to go?" he asked, and Evelyn replied that it was giving Frederick some support, as he was not happy with his situation at home. "Have you met Marchant's new wife?" asked Jamie. "No, but I have been told that she looks a little like I do," said Evelyn. Jamie smiled and said that she must therefore be quite good-looking. He was not prone to making light-hearted conversation, and Evelyn just looked at him in surprise. Evelyn took a carriage home, and Jamie arranged to pick her up later that evening. Mrs. Trent had taken his baggage to his room and unpacked it for him. He did not have a valet with him, but he was quite capable of dressing himself for a birthday party. Mrs. Trent had prepared a light supper for him. She was turning out to be very efficient, and Jamie liked her. He did not normally form an opinion on staff other than a personal valet, but he felt confident leaving this woman in charge of the house in his absence. Jamie and Evelyn did arrive late to James Marchant's party. Liza and James had already greeted their guests and had moved into the ballroom. It was a very lively party, much to Jamie's surprise, as he knew that James was in his late 40s. Frederick made his way towards them and guided them over to his father, who greeted them warmly. "My wife is somewhere here," smiled James Marchant. "She seems to be in demand this evening, but I'm sure she wants to meet you." "Ah, there she is." Jamie looked across the floor and saw someone with her back to him. James called her, and she turned and smiled at him, and then caught sight of Frederick's guests and slowly moved towards them. Jamie drew in his breath, blinked, and swallowed. She was the most perfect-looking woman that he had ever seen. His heart missed a beat as she drew near and looked up at him with the most beautiful bright green laughing eyes. "You must be Frederick's friends. Welcome, Mr. Edgeworth and Miss Carstairs. I'm so pleased you could make it this evening, especially as you must have had a difficult journey, Mr. Edgeworth. I know that the seas have not been kind these last couple of days," said Liza. Jamie found that he was stammering his response, and he finally managed to say that he had been on worse journeys. "Miss Carstairs, I understand that you live fairly close by. Do you travel to England much?" asked Liza. "I haven't been for a while, but when I do, I normally stay with either Lady Redfern or Lady Fawkes. Do you know them?" asked Evelyn. Liza smiled, recognising an unfounded jealousy in Evelyn, who was trying to put Liza at a disadvantage. Jamie frowned at Evelyn's obvious name-dropping. "No, I haven't yet had that pleasure. But I have met Anthony and Diana Fawkes at one of the Benedict's functions," said Liza brightly, and Jamie could see that she was amused by Evelyn's snobbish jealousy. "Well done, Liza," thought Jamie. "Perhaps Evelyn has at last met her match." Jamie spent the rest of the evening watching Liza dancing with one partner after another. He couldn't take his eyes from her, which was noticed by many there that evening, including both James and Evelyn. James enjoyed Liza being admired, and he especially enjoyed that her eyes picked out only him from all the people there that evening. He had absolute faith in her. Wendell moved over to Jamie and said, "As you can see, there is nobody in this world for Liza but James. They seem to be a match made in heaven." Jamie took his eyes from Liza for a moment and looked at Wendell, realising that he was telling him to keep his distance from Liza. "James is a very lucky man," commented Jamie. "I don't think that Frederick feels the same," said Wendell. "Well, he's young, and I suppose it is difficult for him to have a stepmother who is younger than he is," said Jamie. Said Wendell. "I understand that Frederick sometimes goes to the gaming houses with you." "Yes, on occasion. Why?" asked Jamie. "I don't think that he is as skilled as you may be, Jamie," said Wendell. "I never gamble more than I am prepared to lose. I presume that Frederick is the same," said Jamie. "Yes, I presume so," said Wendell, really knowing that it was not the case, and Jamie was realising yet again that Wendell was giving him a message which was asking him to keep an eye on Frederick's gambling habits. Liza was now dashing around and guiding everyone to where the food was and ensuring that they were all well provided for. Frederick was scowling at Liza, but cheered up when he caught sight of Liza's companion, Kate. Evelyn came over to Jamie and hissed at him. "Have you finished making a fool of yourself, ogling Liza in that way? You have embarrassed me in front of all these people." "Don't be ridiculous, Evelyn," said Jamie, with some annoyance. "Of course I haven't been ogling anyone. It's in your imagination." Once again Liza turned and faced Evelyn and Jamie, and he could not help but draw in his breath. He tried to think what it was that he felt, and decided that it could not possibly be love. Love was something that he had never experienced in his life, which was why he found it difficult to recognise. "Has Frederick been looking after you?" Liza asked them. "Yes, he has. Thank you, Mrs. Marchant," said Jamie. "Oh, please, call me Liza, everyone does," smiled Liza, and Jamie's heart missed a beat again. "What magnificent emeralds," said Evelyn, looking at Liza's necklace. Jamie frowned at Evelyn's crass comment. "They were a present from James today. I told him that it was his birthday, not mine, but he said that they suited me," smiled Liza. "They do," said Jamie. "They are very beautiful. They match your eyes." "Thank you," said Liza, and then she was off to make someone else feel comfortable. "They are beautiful. They match your eyes," mimicked Evelyn. "Really, Jamie, you're acting like a lovesick boy. It was a mistake to come here this evening." "Do you think so?" said a rather aloof-sounding Jamie. "I'm pleased to meet some of Frederick's friends," said James, who joined Jamie and Evelyn suddenly, which made Jamie jump. "I do not see him as much as I would like. As you know, I am often at the Edgeworth estate in Surrey, but I do try to get here frequently," said Jamie. "Of course, I see Frederick more often, as I live here permanently," said Evelyn. "Do feel free to call any time," smiled James, who was well aware that Jamie seemed to have amorous feelings for Liza. "We will, thank you," said Jamie, and once again his eyes followed Liza everywhere that she went. She was now talking and laughing with a young gentleman, and Jamie felt a pang of jealousy until he realised that it was Wendell and Amelia's eldest son, Edward, who could be no more than 14 years old. Jamie could see that he too was mesmerised by her, although he knew that it was no more than the crush of a callow youth. Liza was then whisked onto the dance floor by someone who was somewhat older, but she still looked as though she was enjoying the experience, and Jamie could see that the gentleman felt that he was the only one in the room. Jamie could also see James watching her, and she looked up and caught his eye, and Jamie saw the love that she was showing James. He was so envious. To have a woman looking at a man that way was quite unnerving for Jamie to witness. "You must be very tired, Jamie," said Evelyn. "Nobody would mind if we left now." "No, I'm quite awake, Evelyn. I obviously have got my second wind," said Jamie. If anyone had caught sight of Evelyn's face, they would have seen a look of total hatred towards Liza. But there was someone who saw it, and that was Wendell. "What's the matter, Wendell?" asked Amelia. "You look concerned." "Somebody ought to tell Evelyn that she has nothing to fear where Liza is concerned. Liza wants nobody but James. Evelyn's engagement to Jamie is quite safe," said Wendell. "If looks could kill, Liza would be dead and buried by now. Jamie is very foolish, as he has made it obvious that he is enamoured of Liza, and he has only just met her this evening. I hope he is not going to be a nuisance." "I wouldn't worry, Wendell," said Amelia. "James and Liza will know how to handle it, should it become obvious." "You're right. They will handle it if necessary. This is a lovely party. Doesn't Liza look nice tonight?" said Wendell. "What do you mean, nice? She looks absolutely beautiful, and so happy, and so does James. It's so nice to see him this relaxed." "I believe it's the first time that he has let his feelings show," said Amelia. Jamie stayed until the bitter end of the party. Evelyn tried to appear happy to do so, but her patience was wearing thin, and in the carriage on the way home she turned on Jamie and told him exactly what she thought of him. He was shocked that she could be so loud and bordering on uncouth. He was pleased to drop her off at her home, and the carriage returned him to his house, which was relatively near to James and Liza's home. Sleep eluded him that night. All he could see were Liza's laughing green eyes, and he kept telling himself that he could not possibly have such strong feelings for someone that he had only met that evening. He pushed the thought that it might be love to the back of his mind. Instead, he was determined that when the time was right, he would become Liza's lover. James Marchant was 30 years older than Liza, and in the fullness of time she would need a younger man. He did not think that it would be when James died. He thought that it would be just when Liza needed someone like him. He did not want to think about Evelyn. Any small feelings that he may have had for her were now dead, but he was engaged to her, so he had to think of a way to get out of that situation. He felt that if he gave it time, Evelyn would want to break their engagement herself. He would treat her with indifference, and he smiled as that was the way that he treated her now, and she him. Jamie was sitting and toying with his food at breakfast the morning after James's birthday party. He had plans to visit some of the farms on his estate and see if there was a way that production could be improved without spending too much money. He wondered whether he should visit Evelyn, but decided against it. If he ignored her, perhaps she would go away. He need not have worried, as she did not contact him at all that day. His other thought was to go to the Marchants' house and thank them for a wonderful party, but he felt that he could be in danger of showing his feelings for once in his life. Instead, he would write a note of thanks and hand-deliver it, and maybe he would be invited in for tea. He was disappointed in that plan, as neither Liza nor James was at home when he called. He did, however, bump into Frederick, who informed him that James was at work and Liza was visiting Amelia with Kate. "Are you going to the game tonight?" Frederick asked. "I wasn't planning to," said Jamie. "Oh, I thought that Evelyn said that she was going to be there," commented Frederick casually. "Well, I'll see if I can make it," said Jamie. It concerned Jamie that it seemed that Evelyn was beginning to seriously gamble, as it appeared natural for Frederick to say that she could be attending the club, but her family had money, so she should not find herself in trouble, as had Frederick's father. Hopefully Wendell was worrying unnecessarily. Frederick went on his way to his home, and Jamie continued to his. And as he was making his way up the steps to his front door, he looked across the road, and in the distance he could see Evelyn walking towards him. He sighed and hoped that he was not going to be subjected to another tirade. As he was about to place his hat on the hall table, he suddenly thought that Evelyn never walked anywhere, if she could help it. She always took her carriage, no matter how short a journey she was taking. He grabbed his hat again and returned to the top of his steps and looked across the road. There was Liza pushing her way through a small crowd, followed by her friend Kate and young Edward, who had obviously been commissioned to see the ladies safely home. Jamie smiled, as he could see that young Edward was taking his duties very seriously, and Liza and Kate were being kind enough to allow him to think that he was doing a good job. Jamie bounded down the steps and negotiated the traffic, ending up just as Liza and her companions arrived opposite Jamie's house. "Good afternoon, ladies and Mr. Fuller," said Jamie, raising his hat to them. "Good afternoon, Mr. Edgeworth," said Liza. "I understand that you live nearby." "Oh, please call me Jamie. Yes, my house is just across the road. Perhaps one day you would like to take tea with Evelyn and myself. I would say today, but Evelyn is not with me," said Jamie, who realised that he was beginning to ramble a little. "That's very kind of you," smiled Liza, and Jamie could sense that they were going to continue on their journey home. "I have just called at your house and delivered a note, thanking you for a very pleasant evening yesterday. But I can thank you in person now," smiled Jamie. "I'm pleased that you enjoyed it," said Liza. "We must be on our way, as I do like to be home by the time that James comes in from work. Good day, Jamie, and thank you for your kind words. I'll just walk with you to your door, although I can see that young Mr. Fuller is doing an excellent job seeing you safely to your home," said Jamie, and he could see Edward would have preferred to be alone with the ladies. "Are you going to be in Belfast long, Mr. Edgeworth?" asked Kate. "Just a couple of days, and as I said, my name is Jamie," said Jamie. Kate nodded her acknowledgement, and before long they had reached the house, and they said goodbye. Liza added that she hoped that he had a safe journey back to England, as they may not meet again before he left Belfast. He left them, but he could not resist turning to watch them making their way through the front door and disappearing into the house. He wondered how he could possibly have thought that it was Evelyn making her way down the street. As far as he was concerned, they were like chalk and cheese. Jamie strolled to his house and was greeted by Mrs. Trent, who asked him if he would be out that evening. He thought about it and decided that he would join Frederick, but it would not be until quite late that evening. He wanted to ask Frederick a little more about Liza, as he had now met her and her friend, but that was not to be, as when he arrived at where the games were taking place, Evelyn was already there with some of her friends. They cordially greeted one another, and then the ladies made their way to their own tables, and Jamie saw Frederick and one or two others that he knew, and they also settled at the tables. Jamie lost a little that night, and stopped playing when he had lost what he had been prepared to lose. Frederick also lost, But despite Jamie suggesting that he finished for the evening, he was determined to carry on, as he was convinced that his luck was going to change. A cry of triumph went up from the tables where the ladies were, but it was not from Evelyn. She was sitting looking quite depressed, as she had lost a great deal that evening. "I think that the time has come for us to leave," said Jamie to Evelyn. "Yes, luck has not been with me this evening," said Evelyn rather quietly. "That seems to be the same for me also, and I think that Frederick is beginning to get in deeper than is wise," said Jamie. "That is not your problem, Jamie. You don't have to worry about the Marchant household. They can afford it," said Evelyn. "I trust that you are not worried about your losses," said Jamie. "Well, I wish that the cards had been with me tonight," said Evelyn. "Have you lost much tonight?" "No, I only bring with me what I am prepared to lose, and I don't play beyond that. I know that it doesn't please some people, but I have seen how my father has gone down that slippery slope, and I am determined not to follow in his footsteps," said Jamie. Evelyn looked up at him and commented that he was in danger of becoming rather boring. "Well, I would much rather be boring than lose my shirt, as my father has done on numerous occasions," said Jamie. "Have you got over your infatuation of yesterday evening?" asked Evelyn. "What do you mean?" asked Jamie with some annoyance. "Don't treat me like an idiot, Jamie. You know what I mean," said Evelyn. "I am not infatuated by anyone, Evelyn," said Jamie. "I watched you fawning over Liza Marchant last night, much to my embarrassment. Many people must have noticed it. How do you think that made me feel?" said Evelyn. "Nonsense," said Jamie. "It was a delightful birthday party, and I wrote a thank-you note and dropped it off today on behalf of us both. I doubt that you thought of doing that." "No, I had no intention of thanking them for inviting us to an evening where that Liza made eyes at you all the time," said Evelyn. "How was she today? No doubt you were invited in so that she could carry on batting her eyelashes at you." "You are being ridiculous, and as it happens nobody was at home, but I did manage to bump into Liza, Kate and young Edward Fuller as they were on their way home, and no, I did not get an invite to join them. I'm surprised at your attitude, especially as last night was the first time that you had met them," said Jamie. "And it would be the last time, thank heavens," snapped Evelyn. "Well, if I get invited to another celebration, I shall attend with or without you. Don't forget that you are talking about Frederick's family," said Jamie. "She's not," said Evelyn. "She's a scheming minx, as her parents must have also been. Frederick is not happy with the situation, as you well know." "You are entitled to your opinion, but it is not the same as mine, and I would therefore ask you to keep such thoughts to yourself. I am shocked at your jealous vindictiveness." "It is not what I expect of you," said Jamie. "I presume you have means to get to your home. If not, I will make arrangements for you." Evelyn was looking quite shocked at Jamie's attitude, and then she realised that they had not been as quiet as they should have been over their differences, and they were being observed by many, not least Frederick, who was looking rather embarrassed as he realised that the argument concerned members of his family. He was going to have to set Evelyn straight, as he knew that what she thought about Liza was very far from the truth. He knew that she and his father were very happy together, although he still had to come to terms with the fact that she had taken his mother's place. Jamie looked around and ushered Evelyn out of the room, telling her that her jealousy had created great embarrassment for them both. He arranged for a carriage to take her home, and then donned his hat and coat and walked the distance to his home, managing to cool his temper by the time he reached his front door. Mrs. Trent came into the hall to greet him, but with one look at Jamie's face, she decided not to ask if he'd had a good evening. Instead, she just asked if there was anything that he needed. "No, thank you, Mrs. Trent. I'll just make my way to bed," said Jamie. Jamie spent another uneasy night. His argument with Evelyn had unsettled him, not least because he realised that some of what she had said was true. He knew that he was experiencing an unrealistic emotion towards Liza, but he could not help his feelings. He made a decision that night. He knew that he and Evelyn were totally unsuited, and he was going to have to risk the wrath of her family and break their engagement. He was also going to have to acknowledge the fact that he could be accused of breach of promise, which could end up in a court case, although he felt that Evelyn would not wish to have such publicity, as it would damage her chances of a good match in the future. He knew that his father was counting on the finance that Evelyn could bring to the family, but Jamie knew that money wasn't everything, and if he worked hard, in time he could make the Edgeworth estates profitable. "Oh, Liza," he murmured, "what have you done to me?" Jamie need not have worried, as Evelyn arrived early the following day and told him that she felt that it would be better if they parted company. "I see," said Jamie. "I hope that you are not blaming Liza Marchant for your decision. That would be very unfair of you." "She is in part to blame, but I know that she is unaware of it. No, I believe that we need some breathing space, and hopefully in the fullness of time we will settle our differences and get back together again," said Evelyn. "We do seem to rub one another up the wrong way," said Jamie. "That has only happened recently," commented Evelyn. "Have you informed your parents of your thoughts?" asked Jamie. "Yes, they are not too happy about it, but they are far more unhappy about my gambling losses. I finally had to admit how deeply in debt I was into the gambling house," said Evelyn. "I have had to close my account, so I'll have to find an alternative means of entertainment." "I had not realised that you were in such difficulties. As you know, I am not yet in a position to cover such losses," said Jamie. "My father has suggested that I spend some time with friends in France. He did at first suggest that we immediately arrange our marriage, and I'm afraid that I told him, but at that moment you were the last person that I wanted to marry," said Evelyn. "My father then calmly said that I had better tell you how I felt, so here I am. I dare say that your father did not really expect that you would break off our engagement, but I think that you are right that we need a little time apart, and you going to France will give us that. When you return, we will see where we go from there," said Jamie kindly. "You are much kinder than you often appear," said Evelyn. "I will not announce that we are no longer engaged. Perhaps we can see how we feel when I return from France. I'm not sure how long I shall be away, but it will probably be around 3 months. My parents would be pleased that we have not completely finished with each other. They would have felt the embarrassment more so than I, as I would be away in France." "Yes, we'll see how things are when you return," said Jamie, who felt a great deal of relief, but perhaps when Evelyn returned they would both be ready for marriage, and he would have got over his infatuation with Liza Marchant. "You asked about Frederick Marchant. I'm afraid he is in very deep debt to the gambling house. You know that they will contact his father for payment if he can't come up with the money, although I believe he does have a way out of the problem," said Evelyn. "I just thought I should tell you, as you showed an interest. It was Wendell Fuller who was asking if I knew what Frederick's situation was, and I'm afraid that I am certainly not in a position to help him. At least his father is not without money, although I suppose he doesn't wish to involve his father," said Jamie. "I think I will cancel my account with the gambling house, as I have seen how my father's excesses have brought our estates to an all-time low. I'm just beginning to get part of them up and running again. I'm not going to end up like my father, or my grandfather for that matter. As I said, I believe Frederick has a way out of his situation," said Evelyn mysteriously. "Goodbye, Jamie. I will write to you and let you know when I shall return from France. I'm sure we will be able to sort out our differences when I return. Take care of yourself." Jamie sat down and breathed a sigh of relief. He found it difficult to believe that Evelyn had the same thoughts that he had. They were both saving face, as the engagement was still in place. But with Evelyn going away for a while, it may be that she finds somebody else, and if not, they will discuss what is best when she returns. Jamie felt that he must sort out the couple of farms on the Irish estate. He had 1 or 2 ideas which could bring them back into profit, not enough to keep the whole estate financially sound, but enough to begin putting it back where it should be. "I must arrange my trip home," Jamie said to Mrs. Trent a couple of days later. "I presume you are settled financially whilst I am away?" "Yes, sir. I have no worries in that respect, and whilst you are away, I will bring another couple of rooms up to scratch. When will you be leaving?" "I shall go to the docks later today and see Wendell Fuller, who will know what passages are available," said Jamie. At the docks later that day, Jamie made his way to the Marchant and Fuller building, and was directed to Wendell's office, where he was warmly welcomed. He noticed that James Marchant was in his office, and they acknowledged one another. Jamie could have gone to the booking office, but he was used to dealing with the hierarchy of a company. With his passage booked for 2 days' time, he was about to leave when James came to talk to him. "I hadn't realised that you were still in town," said James. "Liza is arranging a small gathering next week. Perhaps you and Evelyn would like to join us." "That's very kind of you, but I'm leaving in 2 days, and I know that Evelyn is taking a trip to France shortly. Thank you for your invitation. Please extend my apologies to Mrs. Marchant," said Jamie. "I will, and do let us know when you are next in town, as I'm sure Liza would enjoy arranging a gathering at that time," said James Marchant. Jamie noticed a very contented look in James Marchant's eyes, and he envied that contentment and wished that he could achieve that feeling. Wendell was watching him, and Jamie had the distinct impression that he could read his mind, which he sincerely hoped he could not. James returned to his office, and Wendell commented that Evelyn's father had booked her passage to France, and that it appeared that they would be both leaving on the same day, although not at the same time. "I'm sorry that you and Evelyn won't be here for Liza's small soirée. She's proving to be an excellent hostess. I'm sure that James enjoys such gatherings, although I know he likes to spend his evenings just with Liza, but he indulges her, and she does everything to make him happy. They are well suited," said Wendell. Jamie realised that Wendell was once again giving him a warning within his message. "Indeed they are," was all that Jamie could think of saying. Jamie and Evelyn met at the docks on the day of their departure. Her father was with her, and he greeted Jamie rather frostily. "I hope that when my daughter returns, you will have sorted out your differences and name a date for your wedding. I don't blame you entirely for this separation. I know that Evelyn can be difficult, and unfortunately I do see a similarity in your characters. However, I am sure that you will eventually rub along nicely together, and of course she will bring much to such a marriage," said Evelyn's father. "I had not realised that you had friends in France," said Jamie in an attempt to change the subject. "They are distant relatives, although we have only been in their company on a few occasions, but they are quite respectable," said Mr. Carstairs. Wendell sauntered over to the group and gently ushered Evelyn and her father towards the appropriate vessel, giving Jamie the opportunity to say farewell and make his way to his own vessel. Somehow Wendell always knew what was needed. The journey to Surrey for Jamie was not difficult, and as his home came into view, he took a deep breath, as he knew that his father was expecting him to have settled on a date for his marriage to Evelyn. Luckily his father was not at home, and he was told that he was staying at his club that evening, so Jamie knew that he would be gambling away what little money that they had. He sighed and presumed that some of the family jewels were back at the pawnbroker's, and Jamie would have to negotiate yet again to ensure that they were not sold on to someone else before he would be able to redeem them. Momentarily he wondered whether he should bother, as he had better use for the small amount of money that he would need to make sure that they weren't sold on to anyone. But the Edgeworth jewels meant a great deal to him. His father returned home the following day, and his mood was not good. He growled at the staff and stomped up to his room. Jamie was in the library, and he sighed when he heard his father's return. He seemed to be sighing a great deal when he was back in Surrey. He knew that he only had to wait a while before his father would come searching for him, and he was right, as he soon heard his father calling his name. "I'm in the library, father," called Jamie. He might as well get the bad news over with as soon as possible. "What are you doing in there, reading, I suppose?" said his father. "No, I'm just looking at the estate accounts, and they do not make good reading," said Jamie. "Have you set a date?" he asked, and Jamie assumed he meant for his wedding. "No, father, there may not be a wedding," said Jamie. "That's no surprise to me," said his father, much to Jamie's surprise. "I heard about your little spat, and that did you no credit." "It's amazing how gossip travels," said a very annoyed Jamie. Well, you had better smooth things over with the lady and get that other one out of your mind, said Jamie's father. Jamie sighed again. We attended a very nice birthday party, and we met the new Mrs. Marchant, and Evelyn got it into her head that I made inappropriate moves towards her. I did not even dance with her, and she greeted us very charmingly, and Evelyn crassly commented on her jewellery. It was most embarrassing for me. You did not ogle the new Mrs. Marchant then, said his father. I will admit she was difficult not to admire, but she and her husband are devoted to one another, said Jamie. That wouldn't stop you if you were so inclined, said Jamie's father. That is ridiculous. It was Evelyn's father who made the decision for her to go to France for a while, and one of the reasons why he wanted that was the problem that she had with her gambling habits. I don't need to tell you how destructive gambling can be, said Jamie, who was desperately trying to take his father's attention away from Liza Marchant. His father sat down sharply. Did she lose much? He asked. Apparently so. I had already told her that I was not in a position to get her out of trouble. Her father has insisted that she no longer attends any gambling establishments. He was quite happy that we spend time apart, and felt that it would do us some good, said Jamie, who was really telling a half-truth. We can't have somebody coming into the family who will lose what little we have, said his father. I know we must carry on the family name, but not at the cost of the Edgeworth estate. Jamie stared at his father in surprise. You certainly display double standards. It's fine for you to gamble our fortune away, but God help anyone else. What's the Marchant woman like? Asked his father. I told you, she's married and happily so, said Jamie. But I can see that you wish it was otherwise, said his father. They are a rich family, aren't they? What are you suggesting? Asked a puzzled Jamie. Well, her husband is old. She will need a young lover soon, and sometimes young lovers get given presents, and that could be quite lucrative, said Jamie's father. Are you saying that you want me to sell myself to a woman? Said a shocked Jamie. That is a disgusting suggestion. What is so different to you paying for a mistress? Said his father. If you weren't so strapped for cash, you would see exactly what the difference is. Your suggestion is disgusting, and when you think about it, you will realise just how appalling it is. I will not be selling myself to anyone, and I would thank you not to spread such a notion which could damage Mrs. Marchant's reputation. She would never consider such a situation. She is a lady and knows exactly how to act as such, said Jamie. Aha, said his father, so you do have feelings for the lady. My feelings are none of your business, and I would just add that who and when I marry will be solely my choice. If you carry on with your gambling habits and we lose our estates, so be it. I shall find my own wife, and I refuse to discuss it with you ever again. Go off to your club and drink yourself into oblivion and gamble everything away. I will do my best to keep a roof over our heads, but if it goes, then I'm sure I will find a means to keep myself, and it won't be by selling my body to some rich woman, said Jamie as he stormed from the library and moved to his room to organise what he would need to spend some time with Anthony and Diana. It was always a breath of fresh air going to the Fawkes household. Hector could sometimes be a nuisance, but Anthony and Diana were calming influences. Lady Fawkes could often be a little snooty, but he always managed to put her in a good mood. Also, there was nothing that he couldn't tell Anthony, and it would never go further. Have you set the date? Asked Diana, shortly after Jamie had arrived. And then she saw the look on his face. Oh, there seems to be a problem. Evelyn and I are having a little time away from one another. She has gone to France for a while, and we will see how we feel when she returns, said Jamie. Oh, said Diana. I think I'll just make sure that your room is ready, Jamie. I presume that you would like to stay with us. If I may, Diana, said Jamie, and Diana could see that he wanted a quiet word with Anthony. Did you and Evelyn have another disagreement? Asked Anthony when Diana had left the room. I didn't think that we had many disagreements, said Jamie, with a puzzled look on his face. You do, Jamie, said Anthony. Even when just talking, You both seem to have opposite views to one another. I know that she would be good for your family, but I don't think that either of you will settle happily. However, it is not up to me to tell you how to run your life. What was the argument about this time?" Jamie proceeded to tell him about James Marchant's birthday party and how they had met the new Mrs. Marchant, and that Evelyn accused him of ogling Liza all evening, and how they had a huge argument about it at the gambling house the following day in front of everyone, including Frederick Marchant. "And were you ogling Liza Marchant?" asked Anthony. "She was difficult to keep your eyes away from, but I didn't even dance with her. She was so charming, and Evelyn was so crass by commenting on her jewellery, which I must admit was quite admirable. And then Evelyn asked if she had met Lady Redfern and Lady Fawkes. I could see that Liza saw her comments for exactly what they were, and that was name-dropping. If she hoped to put Liza at a disadvantage, she was wrong. Liza just smiled and said that she had yet to have that pleasure," said Jamie. All this time Anthony was looking at him thoughtfully. "Ah, yes, so you were ogling her. Well, I wasn't the only one, but she skillfully kept us all at arm's length and made it obvious that there was no one but James for her," said Jamie. "I suppose your father is not happy that your wedding plans have yet to be organised," said Anthony. "He made some very disgusting suggestions," commented Jamie. "Did he? I suppose some of the Edgeworth jewels are back at the pawnbrokers," said Anthony. "Yes, and he suggested that I sell myself to some rich woman with an older husband, like Liza Marchant. I believe his words were, 'It could be quite lucrative,'" said Jamie. "I decided that I needed to calm down, and I do apologise for putting myself upon you and Diana." "You know you never need to ask. We have known one another a long time now. You are considered family," said Anthony. Jamie stayed for a few days, and then returned to Edgeworth House. His father wasn't there, and Jamie assumed that he was at his club. For the next couple of months, Jamie concentrated on keeping the estate just within profit. He had seen the pawnbroker and arranged that the jewels were not sold on to anyone else, and he said that he hoped that he would be able to redeem them in a relatively short time. Evelyn returned from France and contacted him. She made arrangements to visit Anthony and Diana, and she hoped that they could meet on a few occasions. Diana invited him to stay whilst Evelyn was with them, and reluctantly Jamie agreed. Lady Fawkes was holding court with Evelyn, and Jamie sensed that she would have preferred to have her as a daughter-in-law rather than Diana. Hector was making it obvious that he had better things to do than spend the weekend with his family. He had been accepted in the army and would have liked to have spent some time with his fellow officers rather than a gathering which included Evelyn. Evelyn was expounding the virtues of her family in France and the wonderfully elegant place it was with so many interesting buildings. "I'm surprised that you didn't stay there then," said Jamie. "Well, you wouldn't know what was elegant if it was standing in front of you," snapped Evelyn. "Well, it's not standing in front of me," said Jamie tartly, at which Hector snorted and tried to cover his amusement by coughing. Jamie realised that both Anthony and Diana were watching him, and Anthony's words from a few weeks before regarding disagreements between himself and Evelyn came back to mind, and he was determined to try to hold his tongue. "Have you not been back to Ireland recently?" asked Evelyn. "No, not for some weeks now," said Jamie. "So you haven't been in the Marchants' company? I am surprised that you haven't taken a little trip to Ireland so that you can get to know that Liza better," said Evelyn. Jamie closed his eyes and counted to 10, but it was no good. He still could not bear hearing any detrimental words against Liza. "I thought that you would have got those foolish thoughts out of your mind. You made an idiot of yourself at the club and embarrassed me with your baseless accusations. You have said what you think here now, and even though it isn't true, it will stay in everyone's minds, and that is very unfair. You really must stop spreading gossip," snapped Jamie. "Come on, you two. Can't you at least try to be friends?" said Anthony. "My apologies. That was unforgivable of us," said Jamie, and he was determined to be nice to Evelyn. But Evelyn did not seem to want to move away from the subject of the Marchants. "I bumped into Frederick Marchant just before I came here," said Evelyn. "He's James Marchant's son, isn't he?" said Diana. "Yes, that's right. He's not at all happy having a stepmother who is 2 years younger than he is," said Evelyn. "He prefers to spend his time at the gambling club rather than at home." "How do you know that?" snapped Jamie. "Have you been gambling again?" Evelyn was annoyed at herself for opening herself up to criticism, as she had been to the club, and she knew that Jamie was now very much against gambling. "I just met 1 or 2 friends there for an hour or so. Frederick Marchant was there, and I'm afraid he lost heavily," said Evelyn. "He needed someone to talk to, and I obliged." Jamie looked at her closely and knew that she was keeping something from him. Diana, Lady Fawkes and Evelyn started discussing clothes, and then they went on to gossip about various people. They then withdrew from the dining room, leaving Jamie, Anthony and Hector to enjoy a glass of port. They talked about Hector's new career, and he said that he was really looking forward to leaving home and having some sensible company. "So you don't think that I'm sensible?" smiled Anthony. "You know what I mean," said Hector. "Mother fusses over me, and that is driving me to distraction. Evelyn is being a little argumentative, but Diana is a calming influence on them both. I don't think that Mother is treating her as she should, but that is up to you and Diana to sort out. Are you really seriously still thinking of marrying Evelyn, Jamie?" "We do seem to be airing our differences a little too publicly," said Jamie. "I suppose we will eventually get together, but at the moment it seems better if we stay apart." "What's all this talk of the Marchants?" asked Hector. "Oh, it's nothing, Hector. James Marchant's new wife is very pretty, and Evelyn showed jealousy of her," said Jamie, and then tried to change the subject. "Really? Did Evelyn have reason to show jealousy?" asked Hector. "No, she did not," said Jamie with some annoyance, and his annoyance increased when he saw that Hector was smiling knowingly. "Why does everyone think that she has cause to be jealous?" "Because we know you, Jamie, and we know that you are partial to a pretty face, as we all are," said Hector. "Do you realise that the new Mrs. Marchant has been a topic of conversation here in England over the past few weeks, and she has no idea that she is even known about?" said Anthony. "I'm sure that she and her husband would not be happy about that." "You're right, Anthony," said Hector. "It is very unfair, as it is not doing her reputation any good. You must stop Evelyn gossiping in that way." "You must realise that I am incapable of stopping Evelyn from doing anything, and especially when she has fixated on a topic," said Jamie. "Are you still engaged?" asked Hector. "I suppose so," said Jamie reluctantly. "I can see that you are ecstatically happy about that," said Hector sarcastically. "Oh, well, it's your life, and rather you than me. It's none of your business, Hector," said Anthony. "Hector is entitled to his opinion," said Jamie. "But let's talk about what you will soon be doing." They spent the rest of the time discussing Hector's army future, and then eventually joined the ladies in the drawing-room. Evelyn returned to Belfast, and Jamie stayed in England for the following few months. He knew that he either had to make the decision to marry Evelyn or to completely break off their engagement, and he decided on the latter. He knew that Evelyn would not be too happy about it. She would only have to find a way to save face to her family and friends. Jamie wondered if she would return to France for a while. Over the previous months, Jamie had managed to redeem the Edgeworth jewels. He had gradually paid off the debt, and he had to admit that the pawnbroker had been very patient over them. His only regret was that he had never managed to redeem the Edgeworth diamonds. They had been pawned many years before, and eventually had been sold to pay the debt. Jamie decided that the time had come to go to Belfast and face Evelyn and her family and finally make the break. But before he left, he packed up the Edgeworth emeralds, sapphires and rubies and took them to Anthony's for safekeeping. He knew that when his father realised that they were missing, he would rant and rave, but Jamie had left other pieces in their safe, and they really meant nothing to the family, so his father could do what he wished with those. He also left a note in the safe so that his father would not think that they had been stolen. From Belfast docks, Jamie made his way to the house and was warmly greeted by Mrs. Trent. The house was beginning to look more presentable, and the next step would be to attempt to get the Edgeworth lands in Ireland working efficiently. But that was going to be a tall order, and he knew that his concentration should be on the Edgeworth estate in Surrey. Jamie was slowly getting ready to make a visit to Evelyn's family home when there was a knock at the door. Mrs. Trent came in to say that there was a Mr. Carstairs to see him. Jamie frowned and asked Mrs. Trent to show him into the drawing-room. When Jamie entered the drawing-room, he was surprised at how concerned Mr. Carstairs appeared. "What has happened, Mr. Carstairs? You look rather worried," said Jamie. "I had hoped that Evelyn would be here with you, although that would not really have been good for her reputation," said Mr. Carstairs. "No, she is not here, sir. I am not quite sure what you are telling me," said Jamie. "No matter. I am sure she must be staying at a friend's, and forgot to let her mother or I know. "I am sorry to bother you, Jamie," said Mr. Carstairs, and he got up to leave. "I am not a fool, Mr. Carstairs. I can see that you are more concerned than you want me to know. Has she found someone else?" asked Jamie. "I really do not know, Jamie, but I have my suspicions. I know that you and she have been having differences for a while now," said Mr. Carstairs. "I have asked around the friends that I know, but I'm sure there are some that you know and I do not. I tried at Anthony's, but they are not in Belfast at present. Do you think that she would be at the Marchant's house? She talks about them a great deal, although not in a very good light, apart from the son, Frederick, I believe his name is." "I don't think that she would be there." "How long has she been missing?" asked Jamie, who was now becoming quite concerned. "Since yesterday afternoon. She received a note from somebody and then disappeared without a word to either her mother or me," said Mr. Carstairs. "I will go to all the people that I know Evelyn knows, but I will assure you that I will be discreet. They will not know that Evelyn has disappeared. I will just visit them and during conversation will ask if they have seen her recently. I may well find her at one of their houses," said Jamie. "Go home, Mr. Carstairs. I'm sure that I will find her, and that there is a good reason for her disappearance." "Thank you, Jamie. I really don't think that you and Evelyn will make a very good match. You rub each other up too much the wrong way. Your household would never be a contented one, and that gives me no pleasure to say so," said Mr. Carstairs. Jamie quickly donned his coat and called Mrs. Trent to say that he did not know when he would return, as he was going to visit one or two friends. "Are you going to see Mr. Frederick Marchant?" asked Mrs. Trent. "No, I wasn't. Why do you ask?" "No real reason. It's just that he called a while ago and was disappointed that you were not at home. He had an overnight bag with him and muttered that it was no matter and that he would go to the Fullers instead," said Mrs. Trent. Jamie frowned and wondered if that had anything to do with Evelyn disappearing. He didn't know the Fullers well enough just to turn up on their doorstep, so he decided to go to the docks and see if Wendell was there. He tried to think what reason he could tell him why he was there, but he need not have worried, as he bumped into Frederick near their offices. Frederick looked rather unhappy, and Jamie commented that Mrs. Trent had said that he had called. "Yes, I needed somewhere to stay, but you were not at home. So I went to the Fullers instead," said Frederick. "So I understand," said Jamie. "May I ask why you needed somewhere to stay? Not that you wouldn't be welcome." "My problems with gambling came to light. My father thought that Liza had taken some items and pawned them, but it was me. For a while it created a misunderstanding between them, but naturally that has been sorted out now. However, I am being sent to New York for the foreseeable future. My father feels that a time away will help me, and we have a very good manager in New York. I'll be able to learn much from him," said Frederick. "I'm sorry that you have had difficulties. I know only too well what gambling can lead to. When do you leave?" asked Jamie. "Tomorrow. It's very short notice, but I have been very foolish and somebody else suffered because of me," said Frederick, and Jamie assumed that the person to suffer was Liza, as she had initially been accused of pawning items. "Have you seen Evelyn?" asked Jamie. Frederick looked rather sheepish and nodded. "She is staying at the Whites. She had been helpful to me in the past." "In what way helpful to you?" asked Jamie. "She helped me sort out a way to pay some of my debt," said Frederick. "I hope it was nothing illegal," commented Jamie. Frederick didn't answer, which worried Jamie. Finally he asked where the Whites lived and who they were. "Mrs. White is one of Evelyn's card-playing friends," said Frederick, and he told Jamie where the Whites could be found. Jamie wished Frederick good luck with his new life in America and hoped that it wouldn't be too long before he returned. So Liza had been blamed for Frederick's misdeeds, thought Jamie. But his priority was to find Evelyn. Whatever she had done to help Frederick was between them. He had promised that he would find Evelyn for her father, and that was precisely what he was going to do. He was also going to tell Evelyn that they were not suited, and it was best that they went their separate ways. Evelyn looked shocked when Jamie was shown into Mrs. White's sitting room. Jamie noted that she was wearing a dress that was more suited to evening wear, and he assumed that she had been wearing it the previous evening. "How did you know I was here?" asked Evelyn. "I bumped into Frederick Marchant, and he thought that this was where you may be. Your father is very concerned about you, as was I when I heard that you were missing," said Jamie. "He never knows whether I am at home or not," said Evelyn sharply. "Well, he does now, and he asked if I could help to find you." "What has happened, Evelyn? Why are you in hiding?" asked Jamie. Evelyn had an aloof look on her face and told Jamie that it was none of his business. "We are still engaged, Evelyn, so it is my business, and your father came to me for help. There is no point in not telling me, because I have a feeling that I will soon hear whatever it is that has happened," said Jamie with some annoyance. "I have been threatened," said Evelyn starkly. "By whom?" "Is it to do with the gambling club? How much do you owe?" asked Jamie. £300, said Evelyn. Jamie sat down in shock. "I'll have to visit them and see what I can negotiate on your behalf. Do you think that your father can cover that debt?" "I don't think that you realise that my father is also a member of that club, and his luck is about as bad as mine, but he does manage to cover his debts. I don't think that he can cover mine at this moment in time," said Evelyn in a rare moment of honesty. "Well, we'll have to think of a way to get you out of this trouble, but there is no point in hiding away from the world. Why are you being threatened? Normally you can negotiate about these things," asked Jamie. "I was rather foolish. I told them that they didn't stand a chance of getting the money, and as it was only a silly card game, what was all the fuss about?" said Evelyn. Jamie looked at her in horror. "It's a gambling debt, and that becomes a debt of honour." "What have they said they would do?" asked Jamie. "Well, go to my parents for a start, then go to you. They were then going to get a court order to seize goods, and if they couldn't do that, they were going to send me to debtor's prison. I told them that it wasn't possible for a gambling debt," said Evelyn with her nose in the air. "Of course they can," shouted Jamie. "Have you taken leave of your senses? If your father can't pay your debt, I'll just have to negotiate with them and see what arrangement I can make with them." "If you go and see them, then they may insist that you pay, as you are my future husband," said Evelyn. "What have you done, Evelyn? Have you said that I would pay?" asked Jamie. "Well, I did say that I was marrying the future Lord Edgeworth. They knew that you were a member of the club, and they said that they would therefore hold you responsible," said Evelyn. Jamie was now looking at Evelyn with a mixture of surprise, horror, and finally hatred. "I have always been honest with you, Evelyn. I have always said that I am not in a position to help you out of any financial situation. I also believe that we must think again about our association. Even your father thinks that we are not suited," said Jamie. "If it was that Liza woman, I bet you would find a way to get her out of trouble. You have jewels that I know your father uses to pay his debts. You could use those to help me. You know I would pay you back, and you know I am capable of being a good wife to you. I know all the right people and how to be an excellent hostess, which will help your future ambitions. You are lying. My father is extremely happy with our association. It's that Liza who has turned your head," shouted Evelyn. "You don't know what you are talking about. I haven't seen Liza Marchant since around the time of the birthday party that we went to all that time ago. How dare you accuse me of such things? And another thing, I have worked hard to redeem the family jewels. and I have taken steps to keep them out of my father's hands, and there is no way that I will utilise them to pay your debts," said Jamie. Evelyn went very quiet and then said, "Jamie, I don't know what to do. Firstly, we must get you home. Your father will be relieved. He has been very concerned for your safety. It was unfair of you to worry your family in that way," said Jamie. Evelyn agreed, and Mrs. White offered her carriage to take them on the short journey to the Carstairs home. Mrs. Carstairs looked at Evelyn with great relief, whereas Mr. Carstairs reacted with fury, demanding to know where she had been for the last day. Jamie stood back and let Evelyn tell them where she had been, and with embarrassment she said the reason why. "Why didn't you just come home and tell us what the problem had been?" said a concerned Mrs. Carstairs. "I was ashamed, and also didn't want to add to our family's already precarious financial difficulties. I thought that perhaps I could come up with a solution, so that you would never know how stupid I had been, and also I didn't want Jamie to know, as I am aware that he has become very much against gambling, and with good reason," said a suitably humbled Evelyn. "Well, as there is nothing that I can do to help, I will leave you to your discussions. My only suggestion would be that you sell your engagement ring, as you will no longer need it, and perhaps take another extended trip to France," said Jamie. "I am sorry that it has ended this way, but as your father has already said, we really were not compatible. We both would have to make great changes if we were to continue with our relationship, and I do not think that either of us would be capable of such." "I will look such a fool if we break our engagement now. The gossip from the club will spread when it becomes known that you have broken off our engagement. My standing in social life will be over," said Evelyn. "I could say that you should have thought about that before you got into such deep trouble. You knew that I could not have a wife who was susceptible to gambling. I have spent most of my life getting my father out of such difficulties. I am not prepared to have to worry about a second member of my family creating the same problems. I will not be informing anyone of our current situation. What you tell others is entirely up to you," said Jamie. "Good day to you all." Jamie left their house and realised that he now had a spring to his step, and he did not feel guilty about it. At his home, Mrs. Trent had prepared a supper for him, which he ate with great relish. "I shall be booking my passage back to England tomorrow, Mrs. Trent, and I'm not sure when I shall be returning. But I should be pleased if you would continue with bringing this house up to scratch," said Jamie. Just before lunch the following day, Jamie made his way to the docks to book his passage, and as he arrived so did a carriage, and out stepped Liza Marchant. She turned and lifted out a rather large picnic basket, and smiled at the young lad who rushed over from the Marchant and Fuller offices and took it from her and walked back into the offices. She caught sight of Jamie and smiled at him, and once again he felt his heart beating quickly, but all his problems of the past days lifted, and he went forward and smiled down at her. "Mr. Edgeworth, are you arriving or leaving?" she asked with a smile. "I've just made my arrangements to leave tomorrow," said Jamie. "You forget that my name is Jamie, of course. Everyone seems to be leaving Belfast. Frederick left this morning. He will be spending some time in New York." "So I understand. I bumped into him yesterday. I suppose it will give him more experience in the running of the business," said Jamie. "What are you doing with a picnic basket?" "Every now and again I come down and bring James some lunch. And as Frederick has just left, I thought it would cheer him up," said Liza. "It's rather a large basket for James. Does he have a large appetite?" smiled Jamie. Liza laughed. "No, he doesn't, but I always bring more than necessary. Some of the people who work for him don't have many special things to eat, so what we leave they are allowed to take. Quite often those with large families can only afford the bare necessities, so they take a few treats for their children. James indulges me in my whims." Another carriage drew up, and out stepped Amelia, and once again a young lad came forward and took out an equally large picnic basket and disappeared with it into the offices. Jamie lifted his hat and acknowledged Amelia. "I suppose Wendell also indulges your whims, Mrs. Fuller?" Amelia looked confused, and Liza said that she would explain it later. "Would you like to join us for lunch, Mr. Edgeworth?" asked Amelia. "As you can see, we have plenty." "That's very kind of you, but thank you, no," said Jamie. "I must get organised as I am leaving tomorrow." "You must let us know next time you are in Belfast, and I'll arrange a small gathering for you and Evelyn," said Amelia. "Just a few people that you already know." "That's very kind of you. I'm not sure when I will be returning, but I definitely will let you know," said Jamie. Liza and Amelia then made their way to the offices, and Jamie watched them go. He turned and caught sight of Evelyn, who seemed to have been watching from the shadows, and Jamie stopped and waited for her to join him. "Have you been arranging your passage to France?" asked Jamie. "Yes, my father is at the booking office. We don't have your influence with the owners, so we have to deal with the minions," snarled Evelyn. "I see you and Liza were gazing at one another for everyone to see. You obviously weren't telling the truth when you said that you hadn't seen her." "For God's sake, Evelyn, this is the first time that I have caught sight of her since the time of the birthday party, and as you saw, Mrs. Fuller joined her immediately. Besides, it is now none of your business who I see and who I speak to," said Jamie. "No doubt you will enjoy some of the strange ways that she and her husband get up to," said Evelyn. "What are you talking about?" said Jamie. "He likes to beat her, you know, so I presume that she also enjoys that," said Evelyn. "Don't be ridiculous. That's something that's just in your perverted mind," snapped Jamie, who was quite shocked at Evelyn even knowing that such things did go on between some couples. "It's not. Frederick told me," said Evelyn. "Frederick has been banished to New York, and I'm not surprised if he is brandishing gossip like that around town. You can't believe anything he says at the moment, as he is not happy with the situation, and if you spread such gossip, you will be in more trouble than you are already," said Jamie. "Goodbye, Evelyn. I hope you have a safe journey, and mind what I said." Jamie knew that what Evelyn had conveyed could not be true. The look in Liza's eyes told a different story. He knew that she would never tolerate such treatment. Of that he felt confident, although what Evelyn had said did prey on his mind. Over the course of time, he did begin to wonder at Evelyn's words, and those words led to him making the biggest mistake of his life, a mistake which took nearly 20 years to rectify. Jamie Edgeworth appears throughout the Liza Marchant series. Next will be the early life of the handsome Patrick Kelly. For all time, the first book in the Liza Marchant series is now also available as an audiobook.